Hey everyone, in this video we're going to go over a few different fun ways to practice paradiddles. So we're going to do two different short exercises here. The first one will be in 16th notes, and of course we're going to grid something, and the second one will be in triplets. So here's the 16th note exercise we're going to practice. This is at 1:15. Let's drum through it and then we'll talk about it. So a couple things going on here. The first thing that we'll talk about is the fact that we've got a bar of check, tap, check in front of each measure of paradiddles that we play. And the reason I like to do tap paradiddle check in front of paradiddles with accents is it just makes sure you're focusing on having taps look and sound the way that they should. So for instance, after you play your bar of tap check and you layer in your accents on top of it, you want to make sure that the taps don't change. Typically, the mistake that I've seen happen is usually that once someone gets their taps the way that they should be, when they layer in the accent, if anything changes with the taps, it's typically that the taps will start to get a little bit bigger. So for instance, this would be, pay attention to the smaller notes here, and hopefully we'll keep them exactly the same. So they look and sound pretty much the same. And then this would be kind of a poor example, or the mistake that we're trying to avoid. Listen to the taps. See how they got a little bit bigger and louder? You want to make sure you try to avoid that. So have that tap check in there, and that'll really help to ensure that if you focus on that and then add the accents and you keep focusing on the taps, that they're going to look and sound just the way that they should. So the next thing that we do in this exercise is obviously we're gridding everything back 1/16th note at a time. And that will help several things. It will help you to practice things that are a little bit more difficult. We're starting on the E's, the Ands, and the Uhs instead of always on the downbeat with our paradiddles. And the other thing that it helps is it just is more fun and interesting to play, and it just feels really cool and a little bit more groove and syncopation there. So let's take a look at the different bars. So the first pattern is obviously just right on the downbeat. It's the easiest one: 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So that's pretty much that. The next one just starts on the E. So we just wait 1/16th note and then start that same exact pattern 1/16th note later on E. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1. So far I'll play just the first two patterns. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The third pattern is on upbeats or ands. So 1 and. So now the first three patterns: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last pattern is starting on the or the last partial of 16th notes in a count. So 1 I normally put a downbeat there. So all together, let's go through them and count them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's play this one a little bit faster. This is a fun one. This is at 160. Okay, so the next way we're going to practice paradiddles is through triplets. And the cool thing about playing paradiddles in triplets is that you don't have to grid them. They already don't line up with your downbeats. So because we've got 4 parts to a paradiddle, right, left, right, right, and triplets only have 3 partials, that means it's going to take longer. If you're playing them as triplets, it's going to take longer than 1 count to get through it. And so you'll actually have to play several of them in a row until you cycle back to the beginning and end up on the downbeat again. So let's drum through this short triplet paradiddle exercise and then we'll talk about it. This is at 1:30. So this is the first exercise we've done on the channel, I think, where we use the short, short, long structure. I typically prefer to practice things, as you can see on the channel if you just look through the titles of the videos, as a lot of 4-2-1s, which is where you practice something and then you start to have more and more frequent changes. The short, short, long kind of goes the opposite direction, where you practice something and then you do it for a longer period of time. And where the short, short, long can be helpful is if you need to practice something that requires endurance, whether that's physically or mentally. So because the paradiddles are syncopated here in triplets, this would be an example of where we would need to practice some mental endurance. Because if you can get through 1 bar of paradiddles in triplets, 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, 1, that might be a little bit difficult, and by the time you get to the end of that bar, you might be really grateful that you've got those accented downbeats again to kind of latch onto and anchor you and orient you through time again. So then when you get to the double bar, it's a little more difficult. But anyways, that's why the short, short, long can be helpful sometimes. So let's talk about this. So we start with a bar of check, and this check is more of a timing check than it is in the 16th note version. We have a tap check. This one is more to kind of help get us grounded in our triplets, really get our feet in time, understand where our hands are with the met before we switch to something that's a little more syncopated. So we've got a bar of triplets, just natural sticking, alternated sticking with accents on the downbeats. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, or think foot. Foot enda, foot enda, foot enda, foot enda. And then we've got a bar of paradiddles. So we can only get through 3 paradiddles before we run out of notes in a measure here. So 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda. 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda. And now we're done onto the left hand, and we're going to do the same exact thing off the left. 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, 1. So because it takes 4 partials or 4 notes for the paradiddle to be completed and then to start the next paradiddle, we're starting on different triplet partials, different parts of the count. So this first one, we've got 1 enda, 2, and. So the next paradiddle number 2 starts on and. 1 enda, 2 and maybe that's a good way to practice at first. Then you can add the second one. So we've got 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda. So that last one is going to start on 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda. Maybe do that a couple times. 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda. Make sure you're landing on that foot afterwards. And then once you're comfortable with that, add the third one. So 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, 1. Maybe just do 1 bar. Just isolate that a couple times until that feels a little more comfortable and you understand, like I said, how your hands, what you're playing, line up with your feet. So once you feel pretty comfortable with that, you can do the same exact concept here in triplets that we did in 16th notes, where we can just play kind of that whole pattern or that whole short exercise, move the whole thing, grid the whole thing back to the next triplet partial. So let's play through each one of the 3 versions that we could play. So the first time it'll start on the downbeat, the second time it'll start on the and the third time it'll start on the So this is the downbeat version first. Here we go. 1, 2. Now on the and. Now on the And just for fun, here's a bonus pattern. Let's do the same thing that we did in triplets, but in fivelets. So we'll have short, short, long. We'll check, get ourselves grounded in our fivelets. We'll use a tap 5 sticking pattern and then run the paradiddles through it as well. This is at 118. All right, so have fun with that one. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if you'd like to see anything else covered. And otherwise, have fun, good luck, see you next time.